Hi there, I'm Dan McGowan. I'm a clean comedian with a passion for raising the bar on clean comedy. This podcast is all about clean comedy, and I'll be interviewing clean comedians and entertainers, and we'll find out what makes them tick, or what ticks them off. So if you want to learn more about clean comedy, stick around, because this is just pure laughs. Well, welcome to our podcast. My guest today is Candee Anne. Candee Anne, and she's from Redding. I was going to say Colorado. Redding, California is where you are, not Colorado. Redding, California. Candee, how are you?
I'm doing great. Excited to be here. I love what you're doing.
Well, thanks. I've had a lot of fun with these. I took a little break for a couple of weeks, but I'm getting back into the swing of things. I'm glad that you are part of that swing session here. This is great. So Candee, this podcast is all about clean comedy, basically why you enjoy it, what do you think about it, where's comedy going, where does it come from, your thoughts and all that. So that's basically what we're talking about, and really anything you want to talk about. So let me just jump in and ask you this. How long have you been involved in either like comedy, or I know you do some improv, anything performing like that? How long have you done that? What kind of stuff have you done?
My parents put me in theater for my first show. I think I was 7 or 8, in kids theater over the summers, and fell in love with it. My parents would often say, like, Candace, you're not on stage, or Candee, you're not on stage. And I would like to reply, well, Shakespeare said, all the world's a stage.
Good answer.
I don't think that's what they were going for.
Right.
But musical theater, I was trained in sketch comedy in high school, went to a it was a public high school down in the Central Valley, but very heavy in performing arts. Did sketch comedy, anything from like Shakespeare to musicals, and really had an amazing opportunity in high school to get more involved in performing arts. And then did a little bit of theater in college, got into directing was in another comedy, but always felt like comedy wasn't acting. I feel like I really had to like act in more of the like drama or serious plays, but comedy always felt very natural. When I was invited to join an improv team down in LA when we lived in Southern California, again, fell in love with that style. And shortly after that, a lot of my friends that were in improv down there also did stand up. And I remember watching a comedian at like the Improv or the Comedy Store. And then we were at home watching Netflix one night, and I looked at my husband, and we were watching the Hollywood Improv's birthday party.
Uh-huh.
And I remember looking at him going, I could do that. And he was like, what? And I was like, I'm serious. Like, I could do that. And he goes, so do it. And I was like, do not dare me.
I love that. So
there's no takebacks.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah.
And I think shortly after that, I got back into doing stand-up. We had moved up here to Redding, so the comedy scene was not quite as prevalent as it is in LA.
How about non-existent?
But, the few of us that were up here were meeting together, and really found such an amazing group of friends within our comedy scene that we have up here. And I think that's really what's driven me to stay with it. I said, my goal is I want to write a 15-minute set. That's it. That was my goal. I just wanted to do 15 minutes. I wanted it to be a party trick.
Wow.
That I could just like kind of roll into at any point. Like wanted to have a hobby, wanted it to be fun. I think I'm now at 20 and hoping to get to 30 by the end of this year.
So you have far surpassed your goal.
I have far surpassed what I set out to do. Just as making it something to do for fun.
Yeah, that is such a great. All of that is such a great overview, and I want to go back to what you were kind of starting off saying. So, would you say that just as a child, you were always in a performance mode? That's kind of how you went through life. You were wanting to be a performer.
Yeah. So before I took I actually have my degree in psychology, but before I took my first psychology class, when I applied to schools, like to colleges my junior year, my intended major was actually theater. I had no idea what I was going to do, but that was like
Wow.
the only thing that ever sounded fun. I was like, I don't know, I'll just do theater. Like that was the
Yeah.
most entertaining part of school for me. I was also an athlete. I played sports in high school and in college as well, which is also still very performance driven.
Yeah.
So being on stage or in the limelight or under the neon lights of the soccer field was not abnormal.
I don't know if I've ever asked you this, or maybe you've told me and I didn't pay attention, but do you have siblings?
I have I've gained siblings through my parents' marriages. So
Okay.
I have siblings. I
And
was
are any of them performers? Are any of them involved in the arts, entertainment, anything like that?
no.
So you are sort of not the black sheep, but you're the one that's out there in front, setting the pace for everybody to get
Yeah,
up on stage.
I spent the majority of my time as an only child.
Yeah.
And I remember early on I had a cousin, and she and I would do the typical, like, we would put on shows for our parents, you know?
Right. Yeah.
Um,
Right.
so I'm sure there's some pictures of like 8-year-old Candace in a really terrible purple formal gown singing Gloria Stefan somewhere.
I love that. That's something I'd like to see. Well, I did the same thing. Obviously, I mean, my parents.
The purple ball gown really did it.
Yeah, that's what did it for me. I think with the taffeta. Is that what it's called? Taffeta. Am I
Cool.
getting those terms
Yeah.
right? I don't know. Yeah, but my parents were entertainers, and so my sister and I would put on little shows for the neighborhood, and we would gather them all together. And what we would do is we would basically put concerts on of the songs by the Monkees. We would play the records real loud because back then we had records. I guess they have
Mm.
records again now, and we would play those real loud and entertain the neighbors and get my dad upset when we were too loud. But anyway, so like, what's your first memory of getting up on stage and performing? Whether just anything, a play, a song. How old were you? I'm just trying to get kind of a feel for you as a little girl
Oh,
performing.
oh man, on stage, the show was Into the Woods.
Oh, really? Okay.
And it was the kids version, obviously.
Yeah.
Because the second act gets a little dark. And I was the narrator. And
Oh, fun.
yeah, and it was really fun. I had this like kind of medieval style gown that they put me in, and I remember the seamstress had made it out of curtains, and it was incredibly heavy.
Oh, wow.
And I had to stand on this stump that was like a tree stump that we had made over the course of, because as you are in musical theater, community theater, you make the sets too.
Right.
And I remember, like, because as the narrator, like, I had like the opening line of the show, and then the next summer I did Annie, and again had the opening line of that show. And then I think for like third summer I did Treasure Island, and I for some reason also had the opening line of that show.
Look at that. Yeah.
And so like those were some of the earliest memories of just like being on a very dark stage, right? The lights coming up and like starting it off.
Yeah.
But then like I remember, the CD player in the family room and making up my own dances and songs and
fun.
all
So it
of
sounds
that,
like
too.
you've always had something inside of you to be up in front of people, perform. I mean, you're very natural, obviously. When I've seen you do stand up, obviously, and you're very natural at it. It isn't like you're up there panicking inside. Who knows what's going on? We all hide our nerves or try to, but you're one of those performers who makes it look relatively easy, to the point where other people say, well, heck, I could do that. I could do it. I could do what Candee's doing. I can get up and tell jokes,
Maybe someday, they'll be watching me at the Hollywood Improv going, I could do that.
Maybe they will. That line of your husband saying, so do it, is a powerful line, because it's kind of calling you out. And I had somebody do that with me, not about performing comedy. It was about screenwriting, but I would meet with this guy. He was like a mentor to me, and we would meet every week and just talk about life and I, we're both Christians, and so we would talk about faith but one of the things that I would always bring up was how a movie I had seen recently that I hated, and I would say I could write as good as that. I could write as good as that. And one day he said, "Why don't you?" And that was like being hit in the face with a brick. And I went home that night and began what ended up being my first screenplay that I wrote, which, it's okay. It's not that great. I've written more since then. But the point is, I actually typed out on my computer a script. And when I got to, and when I wrote the end, and I tell people this all the time, when I wrote the end, that was such an amazing moment. Kind of like with our jokes. We'll write a joke and we'll work on it and we'll craft it. And some take longer than others. But when we mentally or emotionally or whatever say the end, that's an incredible feeling, I think, to be able to rest on that, rest on the end. Yeah.
Or as comedians, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, pass the tip jar. So, okay, so now let's talk about comedy. So I've really only known you as a comedian because you took that class of mine, and I know right out of the gate, it was clear that you leaned clean, wanted to perform clean. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about comedy, and let's talk about your choice or desire or whatever you want to call it to work in more of a clean vein.
Yeah.
Any thoughts on that?
So we were at an open mic one night, and I think this is the evening that you and I actually met officially, not just like, oh hey, other comic person in the room. Somebody had come up to me and they're like, "How come you don't cuss?" I was like, "I love Jesus." I don't know. And he's like, "Oh, that's cool. So does that guy over there." And it was you.
Oh, really? That's funny.
And I was like, "Oh, no way." And I think that's when I came over and introduced myself and was like, "Hey, there's not very many of us in the world."
Yeah.
And so part of it is living out my faith. I think a lot of comedians just go that direction with the vulgar topics and I find it hard to watch. I find it even harder to watch women do that, and I'm not sure.
Why do you think comedians tend to lean that way, to lean vulgar? Do you have thoughts on why they might do that?
I sometimes think it's because the activation that comes from taboo topics. Things that inherently create a rise are usually the things that are not typically in front of our face all the time. And so the taboo topics feel uncomfortable, and when people feel uncomfortable, they usually laugh.
So it sounds like you're saying, and I think I agree with you if this is what you're saying. If not, then whatever. But it sounds like you're saying that because of the taboo nature, let's say, of the content or the words or whatever, the language that's used, that causes people to feel uncomfortable, and the reason they're laughing may not necessarily be because a joke is funny. They're laughing because of the feeling, the discomfort,
right? Like a pressure relief kind of situation. This is awkward, this is uncomfortable, and the body's natural response is to laugh.
Right. Which is, I get it. I totally get that. But we've seen, certainly in Reading, and I've seen over the years, how after a while, audiences begin to drift away from that, and they won't keep coming to shows unless they honestly feel they're going to laugh at jokes.
Yeah.
If they're not going to laugh at jokes, then why are they going to spend, whatever money on booze and finger foods or whatever to sit there and listen to people get off the charts vulgar, right? I don't know. You know what I mean? It's, yeah. But so because of your faith, really, and your morals, you have chosen to work clean.
Yes. And
Yeah.
I've also chosen to not be in shows that are adult content. So, like, there's situations where we have to, like, there's an age restriction because of the venue, right? So, like, there's a wine
Yeah.
bar in town
Yeah.
that hosts shows, but because of the venue, because of the location, it has to be 21 and over. However, the content of the show is PG-13.
And that really is determined by the venue, right? Don't
Right.
they? Yeah. So and I'm a real, I'm a real big believer in that. I'm a big believer in, if the venue says we want XYZ and you want to come back there and do a show again, you need to be able to deliver X, Y, and Z,
Yeah.
however that gets defined.
Right.
And it doesn't, to me, it makes no business sense to go to a venue that is advertising, let's say PG-13, and begin, talking like a sailor because I can, because it's a freedom of
Right.
speech,
There's no kids here, so it doesn't matter. Like, and
right.
so I feel uncomfortable. There's that nervous laughter coming out, right? Like, I feel
Yeah.
uncomfortable watching comedy like that. And so to put myself in a show coming that, like, I don't know, puts me on the same ticket as them, like,
Yeah.
it's a hard sell for me. It's also a lot harder to invite my friends and family to, like, be
Right.
supportive of this art form.
Yeah.
If they're gonna walk in and see something that makes them uncomfortable.
Right.
And that might, and, like, at the risk of being, I don't know, offensive in some way for doing that to separate myself from offensive comedy, like, yes, that means that, I don't have as many show options because I've kind of created this line. Or there's some friends that, like, I don't get to perform with because they do a different style of comedy than I do.
Right.
And so those are just some of the sacrifices that have come with being a clean comic. But I will say that the versatility of being a clean comic is definitely a strength compared to having to, like, I never have to tone down my set, like.
Do you find it difficult to write clean, or how are you stretched, to write material that, and when I say clean, I'm talking about material that will reach as many people as possible. I've talked about classic comedy before, just, what's your approach to that? Does it stretch you? Do you feel like that comes easy to you? There's a lot of questions there, I know. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think it's hard, because I write what I know.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I guess if I didn't live the lifestyle that I lived, it would probably be a lot harder to write clean comedy. Right. But I'm in a very happy marriage I've been married to my husband for over 15 years already.
Wow.
Like, what, I have a really great support network. I have really good friends. And so to the tragedy comedy kind of thing, or, like, the sexual promiscuity that's often talked about, like, that's also not my life.
Right.
And it's hard to, and so that would be to write something that I don't know.
Yeah, that's a great point. So, what would stretch you would suddenly, you're featuring or headlining or whatever, an adult only show. How do I write, or let's say cruise ships, where they say on cruise ships, you need to have, a full hour of clean or, family friendly, and a full hour of adult. And I've only done a couple of cruise ships, and thankfully the two I were on, they were not demanding that. It was more just to have two sets, that I could do. But that would be a stretch to write something,
So that would be not my
That's
cruise ship.
exactly right. Right? Yeah.
And it's a lot easier to find my voice, find my brand, and kind of stay in my lane.
Yeah.
Now, that doesn't mean that I can't write vulgar jokes. It doesn't mean that I haven't come up with things that I think are funny that fit another brand or another voice.
Yeah.
So I have one that's a little, can I give you an example? Like, it's a little risque.
I can always cut it out of the podcast, I guess. But yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
That's fine. I was at the zoo with my
The
daughter.
zoo, not the zoo.
I was at the zoo with my daughter, and they were like, there was this big sign, like this big poster about artificial insemination. And as a comedian, I read this sign and I think, I wonder if that guy likes his job.
Yeah.
Right. And then there's,
Yeah.
potentially like
Right.
explaining body movements and,
Yeah.
what does that guy wear to
Right.
work? Does a rain jacket suffice?
Right. That's funny.
And it's not, I would definitely not put that in like the rated R kind of category, but though it's funny, and I think everybody's been to the zoo and we all know what artificial insemination is, it happens with livestock all the time or whatever.
Yeah.
It doesn't fit my comedy voice. It doesn't fit my persona on stage. It doesn't fit who I am, the character of myself that I portray in my set. And so at that point, it's like, I love ghostwriting for people. And so like, if I have a friend like, and so I will write jokes for them or help edit jokes for them. And if it can fit in with their set and who they are, then I love hearing those jokes because like I know, and then the entire table that I'm sitting with also knows that I wrote that joke.
Right. Well, I like what you said about branding. I mean, that's such a key for us to land on that. What is our brand? What do we think our brand is? And I mean, I've said for many years that it just doesn't. If I were suddenly to spew out a bunch of foul language coming out of my face and my body and what people know about me, it would be kind of awkward. I don't think people wouldn't accept it necessarily if it was funny, but I don't see the need to do that. There's plenty of that, let other people do that. And I'll just stick with my brand. Do you find it, well, you kind of touched on this, I guess. You talked about not so much missing out on opportunities, but you choose your opportunities based on your brand, right? Yeah.
For sure.
So you've been doing stand-up for what, a couple of years? Actual stand-up? Okay. So do you have any career highlights in that 2-year period of doing stand-up? Anything stand out? Or is it all just one long miserable existence?
Okay, so it's not necessarily comedy related, and maybe this just kind of, I don't know, this might take you off track, but I think my highlights of doing comedy are the friendships, and the social support and the community, that comes from it. I know we did a festival or like a competition out of town together, and then I've done a couple other like open mics or just different comedy things in different cities across the country. And I don't think the community is the same anywhere else. Granted, I haven't been to every city in America, but well,
what it sounds like you're saying, and I think I tend to agree with you. I was thinking of this lately a lot for a lot of different reasons, but when I was very active for several years in Denver, in the Denver comedy scene, it was obviously much bigger than what we have in Reading, but it was always that friendship community that we had, and I was welcomed in. I wasn't part of the super adult, let's say, comics, but we all got along and we had fun. And you're right. I think different towns have different feels, different vibes. And it's hard to kind of get into that clique almost, kind of like in high school, like, you know what I mean? It's like
I was a theater kid. I don't know what you're talking about, Dan.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So you're right. I mean, this is a very strong community we have in Reading right now. There's, many people that are doing this, and some have been doing it a little longer than others, but that's okay. We all are supportive of each other.
Absolutely.
I think. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So like that's really been the highlight. I think as far as like the regular comedy type, I don't know, experience. I think outside of that, the highlight is being funny in different places.
What do you mean? What does that mean?
So being able to like go to LA and do my set and have it work,
Yeah.
be in Nashville and do my set and have it work.
Yeah.
Go to Pittsburgh and do my set and have it work.
Well, and what you're talking about there, which I know you know this, but for people that are listening who might be new to this, that the reason that those are your material works in those towns is, almost primarily due to the writing.
Thank you.
Well, but it's true, right? I mean, if we don't write good, strong comedy, maybe it'll work with our friends because they'll give us the pity laughs, in our own little comedy community. But take it somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I used to think of that all the time when I'd watch comics performing pretty racy stuff for back then. I mean, it's gotten worse now, but back when I was in Denver, and they would talk about wanting to go do corporate because I was doing corporate. And I would think, well, go and give it a try, but you're not going to get corporate gigs with this content. You're going to have to change things up and do an hour that doesn't include all those words and, that content you're doing. And a lot of them would not pursue that because of that, because the writing wasn't able to, transcend different audiences.
Yeah.
But strong writing will always work. If you're writing a joke that's an actual joke, people will respond to that.
Right.
And no matter where they live. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. And that's been fun. And I mean, moving a lot, as an adult and just having friends and family across the country. It's also fun to it's something that you can just I can do regardless. Most cities are going to have an open mic night. Right. And so to be able to hey, tonight, let's go ahead and open mic, and then they get to see it firsthand. That's pretty cool too.
Oh yeah.
To be able to share this art form with other people.
And that really is what it is. It's an art form. It is.
Mm-hmm.
It is absolute, which is why it's so subjective.
Mm-hmm.
So I know you love. What do we call it? Coaching, advising, giving notes. You love you love doing that. So my question to you is, for people that are new at this or have not been doing it very long, what kind of advice or wisdom do you have for newbie comedians, what your thoughts on that?
I don't think everybody agrees with me on this. I had somebody tell me that I was wrong, but that's okay.
Yeah, I can tell you thought it was okay. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, it's okay. If you want to tell me it's wrong, that's fine.
That's fine.
Yeah.
That's fine. That's why it's called an opinion.
Yeah, that's right.
Everybody has one, they all stink.
Right.
But, and maybe it's, I guess I should stop caveating myself as to why I'm giving this advice. So here it is. Don't be afraid to do the same jokes.
That's right.
Don't be afraid to do the same set, to do the same jokes for an extended period of time.
Why? Why?
Because at first you don't remember them and you're trying to remember them.
That's good. Yeah.
And then after you do remember them, you can start improving with them and kind of being a little more fluid and figuring out what changes, and they can take a life of their own a little bit more. You can ad lib after you kind of have the structure and the bones of the joke.
Right.
And with enough time of ad libbing, you never know what's going to come up. And I've had some really great jokes get even better with ad libs that I did not plan, that was not scripted choreography or scripted stage blocking or anything like that just kind of came up. And maybe that's because I have that improv background of I know where I'm going, I know what scene I'm in, I know the character I'm playing, and so I'm just going to allow it to free flow. But I think you have to learn the joke first. You have to write the joke, then you have to learn the joke.
Yeah.
Then you have to practice the joke and let it kind of take on its own little life to figure out what to add, what to take away, how to do that, and all of that takes time.
What do you think is the reason that a comedian might feel like every single show they need to do 5 or 7 that are brand new?
Yeah. they might be tired of their own jokes. I don't know.
Well, but I mean,
Peer pressure.
some comedians. I mean, there are some people who don't do the same joke 2 shows in a row, 2 or 3 shows
Yeah.
in a row, and it's almost like a one and done. And
Hmm.
I guess if they think they got a laugh, then that was plenty. And my whole, I mean, I've talked about this a lot, that if it's just a hobby, and you have this job that pays well and gives you great benefits and blah blah blah, and you're not really in this for anything more than just, hey, every so often I can hang out in a bar and make people laugh. So that's a mindset. But another mindset goes a step beyond that, where you might still have that great job, great benefits. You have a good day job, but you don't approach comedy in a sloppy way. You approach it in a way that's like, I want to get better. I want to get better at this. And
Yeah.
that's why when you've done whatever your 5 to 7 normal practiced set is, it gets, like you said, better and better and better, so that now you have that in your back pocket. And when you go to Nashville,
Totally.
you can say, okay, I can get up and do 7 tonight, and it won't be a
Yeah.
problem. I won't be,
Yeah.
yeah.
I think another reason why there's the new material every time is sometimes people, I really don't want this to sound mean. People like the sound of their voice in the microphone.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think like there's quite a few like very well-known celebrities that kind of compare comedy to like therapy,
Yep.
And and people just kind of like want to get their perceptions or their perspective or their experiences kind of off their chest and like tell people about it, and other people laugh and whatever. Like maybe that's what they're using comedy for, but it wouldn't, like, that's not, I think that's a kind of a different version.
I think when it does not transcend the line of entertainment, and it's just somebody barfing stuff out, that's I mean, this, you talked about not wanting to sound mean. This is very mean. What I'm about to say, it's a waste of everybody's time. And if there's any kind of a tip jar, or if people, if even if there isn't a tip jar, but people have paid money for food or drinks or whatever, why would they come back to hear that? That's where I go always as the producer / entertainer. What do we want people to come back and enjoy future comedy shows at this venue?
The psychology degree in me says you should be paying me.
Yeah.
To listen to that.
Right. Yeah, that's funny. Yeah. Well, there's that weird line, and that's why I think, we have people out there who we would call pros, major pros at this, because they've been doing it for, a bazillion years, night after night after night after night after night, honing that act, and look where it's gotten some of them,
Yeah.
And if that's your goal, then boy, you've got to really jump on that. You can't approach it in a lazy kind of haphazard way. It's got to be, I got to write jokes that land, and I have to practice those jokes, like you said, even if it's in front of your mirror at home, but hopefully it's in front of people. So,
yeah. And I am a very slow writer. I don't just I don't just sit down and be like, I'm going to write a joke.
Well, you have a life and you have a job, and so
yes.
it takes time to craft
and
material.
I'm going to phrase it this way. I wait for the jokes to find me.
Oh, that's good. Yeah. And what do you do when that joke finds you? How do you log it now? What do you do? What's your process?
Yeah. So, I usually tell my husband first. And then I put it in, in the notes app on my phone. And then I inevitably kind of find some way to say that punchline in life.
Yeah.
To like see if it works.
Test it. That's good. That's good. That's good.
See if that observation is funny. And then just kind of build it from there. But usually, it's a punchline that like somebody says something, like I have a joke about my daughter's play kitchen, right? And so my husband and I had literally I just got done making dinner. We just got done cleaning up. And we sit down in my daughter's playroom at our house, and she's like, "Mommy, make soup." And I was like, I just made real dinner.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, that's funny. Right. And
Right. Well,
like,
we have to do that, right? We have to become
yeah.
very observant of the world around us and not be afraid to use what we observe as part of our act, because the chances are pretty strong, as you've found out, that other people have also experienced that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so before we go, I want you to tell people listening. This will probably land in the next couple days. So, what have you got coming up comedy wise? Do you have anything coming up comedy wise? I mean, I know tonight there's a show.
Yes. But the first Friday of every month here in Reading at Mosley Family Cellars, I am fortunate enough to get to produce a comedy show there. And it is clean comedy. So a lot of our friends who you hear on this podcast have been frequent performers.
Yeah.
There. So the first Friday of every month is my kind of go-to show. As well as I'm sure some of the other places that you guys have mentioned previously, like Kelly's Wine Bar and Pub, as well as Matson Vineyards here in Reading. But yeah, looking at maybe some comedy festivals or some other options down in LA if I can get back down south sometime. I was actually supposed to be in a show in LA in a couple weeks, but my day job needed me, so I had to bow out of that one.
Yeah, usually when those day jobs are paying you, they really want you to be there. It's kind
of I've also, and when you work really hard to get it, you should probably keep it.
Well, and you, from what I know, you're good at this, so you're good at this day job.
Yes, that's true.
So, how do people find out about these shows? How do they find out about you? Are there ways that people can follow you?
On Instagram, I am Dandy Candee with 2 E's, DANDEE CANDEE.
Okay.
That's probably the easiest way. There's also CandeeAnneComedy@gmail.com, so people can email me. And that's, again, Candee with 2 E's. So connecting on social is probably the easiest.
And if people do that,
if you're in Reading,
if they connect with you on social, they're going to find out about these shows, right?
Absolutely.
Okay. Good.
But if you're in Reading, the first Friday of every month, come downtown and enjoy some comedy and some wine.
People aren't going to hear this in time for tonight's show, but all the other Fridays it'd be good.
But we'll do it again.
We'll do it again.
March 7th.
Yeah.
It'll be a flashback because it's the 7th and then the 7th.
Oh, that's right. That happens every February, March. Is that true when it's a leap year or no?
No.
Okay, that's when.
Because then there's 29 days, and 29 is not divisible by.
Man, those leap years, 7. They mess me up, man. Those leap years. So, any as we close here, any final thoughts you want to share about comedy, about, I don't know, why you dig it, and any dreams and hopes that you have coming up?
So you have challenged me you're part of the reason why I was like, all right, I can get to 30 minutes. So you have challenged me to record a 20-minute set. Yeah. And so in order to get a 20-minute set, I feel like I have to have 30 minutes of material. Yeah. But it would be really cool to see if I can be accepted by Dry Bar. I don't expect to make comedy like my full-time thing. Like you said, I really do love what I do in my day job.
Yeah.
And like have worked really hard to make it, to like make my dream job a reality. But I really do love comedy. I love hanging out with other comics. I love laughing. Yeah.
It's so great because other comedians, we're the only people that get it.
Yeah.
Like you can hang out with business people or whatever, accountants, and you can tell them what you do and they'll pat you on the back and say, well, that's nice. But, comics get it. We've all bombed. We've all, had great shows. We've all killed. I mean, we've all experienced this. So we're the only ones who get it. And so when you talk to, it's like musicians. I find that with musicians, I could always get along with other musicians because we've all been there. We've all hit the wrong note or whatever, So
I think there's something really special about comics though, because like you said, we see the world a little bit differently.
Right.
And naturally, we usually find the punchline.
Yeah.
And that's really fun to be around.
Yeah, it is. That's good. I like that. That's a great closing line. It's great. It's fun to be around the punchline. I like that. I think that's got to be your new bumper sticker. Candee Anne. It's fun to be around the punchline. So, Candee, it's been great having you with us, with me today, talking about clean comedy here on Just Pure Laughs. And folks, make sure you check out Candee's social, what do you call it? Presence? A social presence? Is that what we call it?
My Instagram page.
Okay, that's it. That's even better. I like it. So check out Candee's stuff. And if you can get to one of these shows coming up, please do, because you're going to not only love Candee, but you'll love the comics she hangs around with. And especially if you like comedy that leans clean, Candee's shows are the ones to go to. So, Candee, thanks again for being with us. It's been great having you.
Absolutely.
Hey, I hope you enjoyed this episode today with Candee Anne, Reading comedian. Make sure you go back and check out previous episodes. There's a lot of great comments from a lot of great comics here on Just Pure Laughs. And make sure you subscribe so you can always find out when another episode is coming up. Thanks. We'll see you next time on Just Pure Laughs.